This is all about Bitcoin, a show dedicated to all things questions and markets related to Bitcoin, little b for the currency, and Bitcoin, big B for the network, a collective journey to understand, apply, and use this innovation, all Bitcoin, all the time. I'm your host, Christine Lee, live from Crypto Bahamas. Let's take a look at Bitcoin right now. The CoinDesk Bitcoin price XVX index is currently at $38,768. Bitcoin is slightly up, almost 1% over the past 24 hours. The most reliable reference prices for institutions since 2014 are now published under the CoinDesk brand, trusted globally as the leader in crypto news, events, and data. Let's take a look at some of our top stories. So, confirming rumors that had been circulating around for days, the Central African Republic has become the second nation in the world to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender. President Faustin Archange Touadéra signed legislation establishing a legal and regulatory framework for cryptocurrencies and making Bitcoin legal tender alongside the existing CFA franc. And earlier this month, we learned that Próspera, a self-dubbed crypto city and autonomous economic hub on the island of Roatan, Honduras, announced plans to make Bitcoin legal tender and issue Bitcoin bonds. And joining us now to discuss is Joel Bomgar, president of Próspera. Welcome, Joel, to the show. So just to clarify, Bitcoin is totally legal to pay for taxes, gas, groceries, debt, legal tender on the island Próspera.
Yes, so in our special jurisdiction on the island of Roatan in Honduras, you can pay taxes, you can buy a home, you can transact. There are no taxes related to Bitcoin. So all of the things, we recognize Bitcoin operating as legal tender, all of the things you could do with any other currency, you can do within our jurisdiction with Bitcoin. And also our jurisdiction is set up to allow other municipalities within Honduras or other companies or municipalities or countries even around the world outside of the United States to issue Bitcoin bonds. So Bitcoin bonds, since El Salvador announced the concept, have gotten a lot of buzz, and those need a legal jurisdiction. And our legal jurisdiction is ready right now for entities that want to float Bitcoin's bonds and do that all in an AML and KYC very compliant way.
That has already launched the Bitcoin bonds, and if so, how much is the interest?
Good question. So we've gotten a lot of interest. It's still early. The financial instrument of a Bitcoin bond is obviously still a new financial instrument. So a lot of those conversations are still in the early stages. But I think we've seen a lot of interest from people that want to have an alternative to this traditional lending mechanisms and not be completely beholden to the sort of traditional lending market. So there's a lot of interest and also a lot of creativity, because with Bitcoin bonds, you don't just have to do a bond with a coupon. You can do a Bitcoin bond that's a combination of Bitcoin and raw land, Bitcoin and real estate, or Bitcoin with a coupon attached. Have there been any commitments? Not that we can share publicly. So still a lot in the early days. It's just we're in the first really 2 or 3 weeks since we announced the jurisdiction. So the conversations are still in the early stages. Hopefully in the future we'll have major announcements on that front, but nothing that's ready for public announcement today.
In terms of making Bitcoin legal tender, so is this a pilot project for perhaps a more expanded program for the rest of the country?
Well, the goal would be, as each jurisdiction adopts Bitcoin as legal tender, of course, with El Salvador, now the Central African Republic, as each new jurisdiction, whether it's towns, cities, counties, countries, or in our case, special economic zones, the goal is ultimately that builds. So as more entities see that it works, hopefully other entire countries would follow suit, as they already have. Certainly our hope would be that other countries, including Honduras, in Central and South America, ultimately adopt Bitcoin as legal tender. And ultimately, the more jurisdictions you have that show that it works and it's not scary and it's functional and the technology with the Lightning Network is there to make it possible, that just accelerates adoption. And so we've been hard at work doing that. We also announced just in the last week or two that we've raised an additional $60 million, 60. So an additional $60 million to continue to expand our jurisdiction within Honduras, and just lots of other exciting things around that will ultimately enhance that. So we also just announced the Roatan International Financial Center, which will be a financial center that's built on similar to the Dubai International Financial Center. And with that, the Próspera Financial Services Authority, which is staffed by world-class talent from the DIFC and other jurisdictions as well in Honduras, the FDIC in the United States, and others. So all of this really builds an ecosystem that makes it easier for additional jurisdictions or additional countries to jump on board, knowing that they can go down the road of Bitcoin operating as legal tender or floating Bitcoin bonds, and they're not alone. This is not completely new. This is something that is being adopted, one step at a time, one country at a time, and now with two whole, entire countries adopting Bitcoin as legal tender, more will follow in the near future.
And I wonder, maybe you could tell folks what Próspera is and what the makeup of the population is. Are they mostly crypto native? Are they mostly foreigners, or many are native Hondurans?
Good question. So Próspera is a special economic zone on the island of Roatan in Honduras. Within our special zone, we have a very high degree of legal, political, regulatory, and tax autonomy. So that allows us to do things like manage financial services, healthcare, regulation, taxation, which allows us to make decisions like this. Próspera is one of only 3 of these special jurisdictions that will ever exist in Honduras. The program only allowed or approved 3 charters. And so we operate under one of those 3 charters in Honduras to operate in a semi-autonomously governed special economic zone, in this case on the island of Roatan. So our jurisdiction is open for business for those that are interested in being sort of on the forefront of innovative human governance and the forefront of the of advances in medicine, finance, currency, exchanges, things like that. So but we are a special jurisdiction with a much higher degree of autonomy than exists anywhere else on Earth.
And how would you describe the anti-money laundering and New York customer standards there and prevention measures against, say, wash trading and the like?
Sure. So, as you know, a lot of things in Bitcoin and the broader crypto market are shy away from regulation and shy away from compliance. We want to do the opposite. We want to say we have the Próspera Financial Services Authority that is staffed with the heavyweights that know how to regulate effectively. We are going to follow every step of the way AML and KYC standards, both for currency as well as Bitcoin bonds. And I think what's key is that the jurisdiction take that very seriously, and we don't want to be a jurisdiction for wash trading, money laundering. We do not want any of that in our jurisdiction. So a lot of what we view it as is the higher standards we hold. What we want to attract is people who want to be very innovative in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency, very innovative in what they are doing, but very legal in the context of being very innovative. So that's why our entire regulatory structure has been set up to really be as cutting edge as exists anywhere in the world, but not a jurisdiction that's a wild west of wash trading, right? So we are a jurisdiction that understands the value of that. And right now you can find very stable jurisdictions that are too restrictive. They don't allow innovation. And then you can find the wild west. So we're trying to be the best of both worlds with maximum innovation combined with a very disciplined approach to AML, KYC, regulatory compliance, no wash trading, that sort of thing.
It's a grand experiment. All right. Well, thank you so much, Joel, for coming on and explaining to us what's happening in Próspera. I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me on.
That was the president of Próspera, Joel Bomgar. All right, coming up, a conversation with Tether's bank, Deltec, and the reserves backing the world's largest stablecoin issuer, plus a BTC price analysis with CoinDesk's Damanick Dantes. The chart of the day is brought to you by Crypto.com, the world's fastest growing crypto app. Australia is going to have its first Bitcoin exchange-traded funds in the near future, despite some delays because of problems with the plumbing that delayed today's scheduled launch. Australia is following in a long list of Bitcoin ETFs issuances in Europe as well as Canada, which are currently facing fund outflows as shown in this last node chart. Right, as Bitcoin continues its range-bound trajectory, drifting between $37,000 and $45,000, ETF traders seem to have lost interest and are choosing to exit the Canada-based 3IQ CoinShares Bitcoin ETF through redemptions after buying the dip in March. Of course, there have been other periods of outflows, but they haven't been this prominent. And with this outflow comes a compression in premiums to the point where it's now a 2.7% discount. So what will happen to Australia's Bitcoin ETF from Cosmos? CoinDesk's markets team saying that given that it's launching in a market with a net outflow from Bitcoin ETFs as well as exchanges, as traders look to hodl, it's unlikely that the premium will last. All right, joining us now to discuss the BTC price and more is CoinDesk Markets reporter Damanick Dantes in New York. Hello there, Damanick. So April is seasonally a positive month, usually for Bitcoin in the crypto markets, yet we're seeing a lot of pressure. So how does it look to be ending this month?
So far, we're on track to register an 18% loss but yeah, like you said, April and May tend to be seasonally strong for both cryptos and equities. And over the past 2 months, we saw like around the last week or so of February, there was a bullish uptick. And typically we see that as a sign of a short squeeze. When shorts in the first half of the month tend to overwhelm the buying orders, you tend to have some sort of a relief rally. And I think that's what we're seeing here. We bounce off 37.5K support, and we'll probably end the week a little bit better, but still very shaky so far.
All right, so how low do you think Bitcoin will go?
Right now, the midpoint is 40K, and buyers will need to hold above that level on a consecutive basis over the past maybe week or two. I'm looking for that as signs of stability at least. But right now, the slowing momentum, even on the weekly chart, we had this slight uptick in momentum over the past month. But given the recent downdrift, that kind of faded off a little bit. If we break below this support level around 37.5K, the next area of support is around 27 to 30K. Then it becomes a little bit more tricky from there. The negative MACD signal, the monthly chart, is very concerning, similar to equities as well. It seems like we're in for a sort of range-bound to negative year. So, we're not at a cycle low. We need to see conviction on the rallies, but also some capitulation, like a high volume sell-off to really trigger in some attractive buys.
Meanwhile, Bitcoin's put-call ratio remains elevated. So what does that signal?
Yeah, so the put-call ratio just measures bearish to bullish sentiment. Puts allow you some downside protection for the option traders. So when the put-call ratio is high, it indicates some level of unease among options traders. But recently we saw that the put-call ratio kind of teetered out a little bit here. We saw the past 2 months, it's within this range, but elevated above the December levels. The recent uptick in the put-call ratio came around the beginning of April when Arthur Hayes, the CEO of BitMEX, issued out some warning that Bitcoin could collapse towards 30K. That triggered some hunt for downside protection among the options traders, but then we saw that move pretty much short-lived. So, I think overall, when you're in a range-bound scenario, low volume, at the very least, you want to find some downside protection or some sort of hedge because there's just a lot of uncertainty about where the price will go. So we're seeing that positioning among the option traders at least.
Okay, and so finally, what are BTC holders doing? Is there any capitulation? What's the supply and demand for BTC?
No capitulation yet. I mean, the past, when you saw the capitulation from especially the long-term holders, when they tend to take profit and they realize that, hey, we might be in for a longer period of losses, that tends to create a better buying zone in the past. We haven't seen that yet. This chart just shows the net unrealized profit and loss among long-term Bitcoin holders provided by Glassnode. And right now we're in the belief denial stage, which is indicative of that range that we've been seeing. And typically when you get that green indicator, it prolongs a period of losses, perhaps. So I think that's what we're seeing here. It's more of a distribution phase where long-term holders who have experienced stellar gains over the past year and a half are now starting to take profits. So it's more of a distribution phase before you see the accumulation phase pick up.
All right. Well, thank you, Damanick, for joining us. Appreciate your insights. Have a great day.
Thank you.
All right, that was CoinDesk markets reporter Damanick Dantes. All right, finally, Tether is the largest stablecoin in the crypto market by market cap, with about over $80 billion out there. It's often used by Bitcoin traders to trade in and out of volatile Bitcoin positions. For every Tether issued, there is a $1 held in reserve, in theory, at least. And in the stablecoin behemoth's early days, Deltec Bank was one of the only financial institutions in the world that would bank them and verify their reserves. Earlier, I had a chance to speak with Odetta Morton, CEO of Delta Bank, the largest private bank in the Bahamas with a 75-year history on the island. And I asked her what it was like to service crypto clients 5 years ago compared to where we are now. Have a listen.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, we took about a year to really understand the space and to really make sure that we could wrap our minds around the risks that relate to the crypto industry from a banking perspective. And then we took our first client on at the beginning of 2018. And I don't think that anyone expected for the industry to grow as it has. And I think that Deltec has been well positioned to really just benefit from that growth. Obviously, we've been able to bank exchanges and stablecoin and other, persons in the crypto ecosystem. And no, I think there's been great evolution. I think there's still more evolution to come, though.
What do you think it is about the Bahamas that has attracted this kind of business?
The government of the Bahamas and the regulators here have been very, very nimble, and they have been fast-moving and been able to roll out a regulatory regime for digital asset operators to exist and to operate. And so I think that, it's been a huge benefit, and it's what attracts crypto players to the Bahamas today.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of your most well-known clients that we know of is Tether. And I want to spell out, there was a case in February of last year from the New York Attorney General where Deltec was named. And it was in this case, I'll just read it from what the New York Attorney General had written out in a statement. On November 1st, 2018, Tether publicized another social self-proclaimed verification of its cash reserve, this time at Deltec Bank and Trust of the Bahamas. And they stated that tethers were fully backed by cash at $1 for every tether. However, the very next day, on November 2nd of 2018, Tether began to transfer funds out of its account, ultimately moving hundreds of millions of dollars from Tether's bank accounts to Bitfinex's accounts. So I'm wondering, is this normal or business as usual among stablecoin issuers?
So, we don't really speak to the business of our clients, but what I would say is Deltec is the bank for innovators, right? We have always been supportive of innovation and positive disruption. We have a strong risk management framework, and we make sure that, our clients are compliant with AML standards, AML-CFT standards. And so, this is something that we will continue to have our finger on the pulse in terms of innovation and just positive disruption.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
I guess, on one side, I can see that for businesses that want to innovate and are trying to navigate these regulatory waters, it's difficult. And so they have to be nimble, and sometimes things like this slip. But as these regulatory rules get worked out. But on the other hand, for a traditional financial market and regulators of a more traditional system, this would look a little gray.
Yeah, I think, it's funny. I had a conversation with someone yesterday, and I was saying to them that, when you're a trailblazer, the road is not easy, right? And sometimes you're walking through a path and there's a spotlight directly on you to see your steps, your missteps, and everything. And you're the only one in the room, right? And I think that what Deltec tries to do is to partner with the innovators, and again, positive disruptors, and help that light to get just more expansive so people can appreciate what the space looks like, because sometimes you fear what you don't see. Yeah. Yeah.
So going forward, what are you focused on the crypto industry and digital assets? What do you see for Deltec Bank?
We're focused on innovation. So, back in 2017, crypto wasn't the only thing that we were interested in. We were interested in AI, we were interested in biotechs. And so what we want to do at Deltec is to keep our finger on the pulse in terms of new innovative sectors and emerging industries, and to be able to be their financial partner.
Are you guys involved in the sand dollar at all?
So no, we actually don't bank Bahamian dollars because we are an international bank. So our license doesn't allow us to bank Bahamian dollars.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are the advantages of coming here to the Bahamas if you're involved in, you say your clients are international, so why would they want to come here?
Well, again, I mean, the Bahamas has been, especially for innovation, the Bahamas, we are positioning ourselves to be a hub for innovators.
Is it also taxes, or is it what kind of incentives?
So obviously there are tax incentives. I mean, it depends on the jurisdiction that you may be coming from, right? But definitely the Bahamas has made, shown their value proposition in terms of the ease of doing business here, the ease in setting up a business here, and being able to operate remotely. Our proximity to the U.S. is another advantage, right? We're literally across the waters. We could throw a stone to Miami. And so I believe that there's been a lot of attraction to the Bahamas just because of that as well. Additionally, we live in a world right now where everything is remote. And so you can literally come here, set up shop, and enjoy the beach and the sun and the sand and everything else and do business.
Well, we do see that FTX has looked at many jurisdictions, but they ultimately chose Bahamas to relocate to. Why do you think that is?
Again, partnership with the governments, ourselves, banks like Deltec that really have been at the forefront of crypto innovation and making sure that we advocate on behalf of the innovators that we represent. But not only Deltec, I mean, obviously the government has done a huge job in rolling out the DARE Act. It's the Digital Asset Registered Exchanges Act. And most recently, last week, our Prime Minister announced digital asset policy to show that the country is moving ahead in this space.
All right, that was Deltec Bank CEO Odetta Morton. That's it for All About Bitcoin. I'm your host, Christine Lee. Join us live tomorrow as well, the same time, 3 o'clock Eastern, and First Mover, 9 a.m. Eastern, for all live right here in Crypto Bahamas. You're watching CoinDesk TV.